So in 1975, my grandfather wanted a lawn tractor, but he didn't want to pay for one. So he built it from scratch. All right, so I'm here in Connecticut at my parents' farm. This is my dad, Paul. Say hi, Paul.
How you doing?
And we're going to talk about my grandfather's homemade lawn tractor. All right, so this is my dad's dad. So what was your dad's name?
His name was Hans Kruger.
All right. And what year was he born?
Born in 1900.
He was born in 1900?
1900.
And where was he born?
In Hamburg, Germany.
Okay, so he wasn't born in America.
Was not.
Okay.
Emigrated into the United States at age 4 with his family.
Come a tiny bit more in frame for me. There we go. And then his trade, he was a machinist.
Machinist.
By trade.
Master machinist. He was in the business for 53 years.
His specific title would have been tool and die maker, right?
Tool and die maker would
is
be
the specific job title.
Exactly right.
But these days we say machinist,
right,
more or less. And what year, how old was he when he apprenticed into the craft?
He was 14, because back at the turn of the century, if you weren't college bound, you would apprentice into a trade of some sort.
And 14 was a normal age
normal
to begin.
Age, yep.
And he drew a salary?
He was a...
For apprenticing?
Yes.
Okay, so what was his salary?
It was $4 a week, 2 of which he gave to his mother for room and board.
Okay.
So he had $2 whole to spend for the rest of the week. But that was typical of the day.
Well, it was 1914, so that was probably a decent amount of money.
It was good. It was typical.
Okay. And so okay.
And by the way, that was a normal week work was 10 hours, 5 days a week, and only 6 hours on Saturdays.
Oh, so a half day.
Half day.
That was very generous.
That was,
and Sunday you got the day off.
You got the whole day off. That
to
was nice.
lay around in a stupor, exhausted from
Exactly,
a 6-day
right.
work week.
That was pretty much it, I guess.
And you saw him work a lot when you were a kid.
Yes.
Did you go to shops where he worked? Did you see him in shops?
I did. I witnessed flat belt driven machinery.
To way back in the day.
Way back in the day, and this was in the 40s and 50s.
Right. And he favored South Bend brand
brand lathes. That was his favorite lathe.
And Bridgeport vertical milling machines.
Absolutely. And he always said with those 2 machines you could run a machine shop.
So what we're here to do is talk about his lawnmower, not lawnmower, but lawn tractor.
Lawn tractor, yes.
Essentially, that he made.
Right.
So he and my grandmother, they lived in Greenwich, Connecticut.
Right.
And they had 4 acres.
Right, 4 acres.
And my grandmother ran a nursery business, a plant nursery.
Right.
And it was very helpful to them for her business and for taking care of the place to have a ride-on tractor, not a lawnmower.
No, just a tractor, something to pull a trailer with, basically.
Okay. So for moving things around and doing basic stuff. Now, this was 1975 that he made it.
He created this thing in 75. Yeah.
Why didn't he just buy one?
Well, my dad was the kind of a guy, if he could make it, for, in this case, no investment, literally no investment, because he fashioned it from an old-fashioned 2-wheel garden tractor.
Okay.
Which today is just a piece of history, but
Doesn't
they were
exist.
popular.
Well, we'll look at one in a minute so that people will know what we're talking about.
Yeah, they were popular immediate post-World War II and actually into the pre-war area.
So the garden tractor gave him an engine and a rear axle.
Yes, it gave him the engine and the rear axle.
All right, well, let's move over to the machine and we'll talk about the specifics. Okay, so this is the machine that he actually built at home. Here's the whole thing. So I drove this around a lot as a kid, so I've got a lot of good memories of it. You get on it like this, and you've got foot plates. I guess you call them footrests that keep your feet off the tires.
Right.
And this steering bar here, and you steer with that. It used to be much bigger. The tractor did. It was much bigger when I was 10 years old.
Oh, yes.
Now it seems comically small. So the throttle is located under the seat right here. There's a little lever that actuates the throttle. You pull it in and out. And then this actually is the clutch, basically, this lever here. And we'll talk about how that works. So when it's forward like that, you're out of gear, even though there are no gears and there's no transmission. You pull it back to go, and then you grab this thing to steer.
Right.
at about half a mile an hour at top speed. This thing's incredibly slow. So that's how it basically works. Let's take the camera around and talk about some of the technical details of how he made it. I want to start over here just in the front. So here's the front end. Where did the front end come from?
He manufactured it.
So he made this whole front end.
Everything from the axle of the rear wheels forward.
Okay, so everything here he made. So can you tell me just a little bit about all the different linkages and stuff going on here that makes this work?
He actually built kingpins, and you'll notice they have grease fittings on them.
Okay, so they can be greased for maintenance.
Greased for maintenance.
Okay.
This pieces of cast iron is counterweights.
Right, because the motor's really heavy compared to the rest of it.
Exactly right. What I think we haven't pointed out yet is it has no brakes, has no reverse gear.
Yeah.
Fortunately, their land was very flat, so neither of these shortcomings made a big difference.
It wasn't hilly like we have here.
Right.
The no brakes were kind of a setback when I was a kid driving it around. There were hills that I really avoided.
But it served its purpose very, very well.
The thing that surprises me even now is when I grab the steering wheel and move it, is actually how tight the steering is. There's very little play or slop in this mechanism.
He would not have tolerated that.
He would not have tolerated that. And now it's obviously not rack and pinion. Is there a name for this kind of steering system?
Would be, I guess it would be tiller steering. There's no steering wheel, but this device would be called a tiller. Early automobiles had those as well.
Right, okay.
And it does have kingpins, and they're fully articulated.
Yeah.
So the steering is actually very precise and easy to drive. It's a very easy machine to operate.
It is. I mean, I was 10 years old, and I was driving this thing around unsupervised, which might not have been a good idea, but whatever. That's all in the past.
That is in the past. You survived, thankfully.
Let's go around to the back and talk about the mechanics more specifically. Okay, so looking at the rear end of Opah's tractor, you get the idea that this is what he started with. This basic deal here was the garden tractor he started with, right?
That is absolutely correct.
So original wheels, original axle, that's the Briggs and Stratton motor that he had. And then, so you tell me, where did it go from there?
Well, let me just point out a couple of things about this. As Rex pointed out, the same basic Briggs and Stratton engine. This one has a 6-to-1 reduction gear built into it.
So more torque.
More torque.
Takes
an 1800 RPM running engine down to a walking speed.
Okay.
Because of the gear reduction and the small pulley and the large pulley, which is belt drive.
But it's V-belt drive, so that's high tech.
Well, it worked very, very well. The double V-belts.
Yeah, what's about that? Why is there a second pulley up front there?
Because
there's two pulleys right here. What's that about?
Okay, it had two V-belts.
Okay.
Okay, I took one off when I was probably a teenager, so I could make it go faster. I switched the pulleys. The concept was valid, but the engine wasn't up to the task, so it didn't work very well.
So I think the most impressive part of this thing is the way that he would engage the mower, the motor, for making it go. So the pulley is over here, and if it's idling, it's just slack like that. And then what would you call this thing he's got going down here?
Well, that's actually part of the original tractor. That's the engine slide. That's the way the garden tractor engaged the belts.
Okay,
it moved the engine to produce tension on the belts.
Okay.
To stop the tractor, you simply move the lever, and that would slide the engine forward, thus releasing tension on the V-belts. And by the way, this technology was pretty much common to most garden tractors, most makes of garden tractors.
Okay, so my dad's really paranoid that I'm going to mislead people and make them think this is a garden tractor when it's not a garden tractor, and he's really concerned that I point out that it's only similar to a garden tractor, okay? But it gives you the basic idea. So this is a lot like a garden tractor, right?
It's very similar in concept.
Okay.
The wheels, of course, are much, much larger. This is a dedicated sickle bar.
Which means it cuts grass. We don't have these anymore, but this murderous contraption in the front here is actually for mowing high grass, like field grass.
Field grass.
You wouldn't mow your lawn with it.
No, not
okay.
It had handlebars like this. It had larger wheels. Had a drawbar back here.
So what's a drawbar mean in this context?
Oh, okay. The drawbar is an attachment, a part of the tractor to which you attach things you pull, such as a harrow.
Oh, okay, so like a hitch.
A hitch, yeah.
Okay.
A hitch.
Yeah.
A garden cart, that kind of thing.
How would you draw a garden cart when you're walking behind it at the handlebars? How does that work?
Not very well.
Okay.
You would typically sit on the garden cart.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'm starting to see why these things weren't popular for very long.
No,
a lot of this sounds like a stupid idea, frankly.
But it was the technology of the day.
And affordable.
Affordable. One thing I would like to point out is that this is pre-recoil starters. Okay,
What's a recoil starter, Pop?
Well, a recoil starter is a device that you start your lawnmower with, and you pull the lever, the cord, and you let it retract, and life goes on.
Right.
In these engines, you took a piece of rope, like so.
Did it come with one, or did you have to supply your own?
I don't remember. All the ones we had were homemade, probably
Okay.
because the original got lost. And you wrap this rope around the starting pulley, like so. And you gave it a mighty tug, and that started the engine.
Right. There's no chance in hell this thing's starting right now.
No,
That's not happening.
That's probably not going to happen.
Okay.
And then when you were through, you would take this starting cord, and you would use a half hitch, like so, and let it dangle.
Yeah, that's ghetto.
Well,
It was. I get it. It was a technology of the day,
Right.
but that's
also
man.
kept costs down.
I bet it did.
One less thing they had to deal with.
All right. Well, speaking of keeping costs down, let's go talk about Opa's cost-saving garden tractor. So single spark plug, 1 cylinder.
Single cylinder, 4-stroke.
I remember it being loud as hell.
That was accepted back in the day.
But it was. What you're saying is it was loud as hell.
Very small muffler.
You put that on.
No, that's the standard.
Yeah?
Stratton
Okay.
muffler. You'll notice the one on the sickle bar had the same muffler on it.
Okay. Little tiny muffler.
Little, yeah.
Okay. And it's got the same, you can see what my dad was just pointing out, it's got the ripcord, and there it is, tied right on the steering wheel there. So you tie that back, you wrap it around
the starting pulley.
around the starting pulley, you get it started, and then you'd come back around, you get on, and you tie it up right here, and then you pull your lever back and go, and drive it to wherever you were going. The throttle's under there. And then my favorite part of this, I always thought this was great when I was a kid, is there's a screwdriver right here. And when you wanted to stop the thing, right, you take the screwdriver around to the engine, and you put it against the engine like this, and then you'd lean it against the top of the spark plug. And that would short out.
That would actually ground out.
It would ground out. It would ground that out, and the thing would slowly shudder to a stop.
That's exactly correct. Originally, it would have had a little piece of sheet metal bolted to the engine block.
Okay.
And you just push that. That was long gone, and Pop was not likely to buy a replacement part.
Okay, but why didn't he just fabricate a new one if it was just sheet metal?
Guess the screwdriver was easier. As Rex pointed out, this is the lever by which you move the engine to engage the pulleys on the belt drive. Very, very simple. It was a lever that was actually part of the garden tractor, and you can see that he reworked it with a jack shaft and this long bar that goes back to move the engine.
And he just had a couple pieces of angle iron here that he bored out
Right,
to work as brackets.
right. Again, the jack shaft, you would call it,
Okay.
and it was very simple.
Yeah.
And this was the bolt that secured it to the shaft.
Right, so like instead of having a key.
Yeah,
Okay.
in essence, it was that screw, it was
Yep.
that bolt. And that was it. I mean, it was really that simple.
Now, what basically forms the body of it? What are these two long bars right here?
Just angle iron.
So it's just pieces of angle iron.
That he probably had lying around.
Right.
Again, he didn't buy much if he didn't have to.
Well,
Notice the footboards are screwed the steel brackets onto that angle iron frame.
yep, I see that. And then how do you figure he made these, the footrests over the wheels? Those nice spiral bends and everything.
Again, that was his way of creating footrests. Very simple bar stock, bent at about a 45-degree angle, to which he bolted these pieces of steel.
But do you think he just put those in a vise and then grabbed them with a crescent wrench and turned them? Is that how he did that bending?
Something like that. I would suspect he used a heavy-duty wrench, maybe a big monkey wrench or a pipe wrench,
Right, and then just bent them cold.
but bent them cold.
Right. And then made bends in these pieces of sheet metal here that
Right.
form the footrests.
Precisely.
Right,
Again, stock he had lying around.
right. And these hunks of cast iron that form the counterweights, where do you think those came from?
I haven't a clue.
Okay.
Okay, I can tell you, he probably started with a large piece of cast iron, and I see what looked to possibly be drill marks here.
Yeah.
And he probably drilled as close as he could get, and then took a hacksaw, most likely.
And hacked the
cut
rest of
between
the way
webs.
through. Yeah.
Right.
Well,
And
we've
I
all
see-
done that in the basement now and then.
I see 3 of them here, so
It's probably one piece of stock that he cut up
Right.
to make that weight.
I can't imagine the labor that was involved and the time that was involved, but
Probably a lot.
a lot. But
Now, did they have like oxyacetylene back then? Did he have a friend who could have just torched it apart for him?
probably, but
This was his way he could do it at home.
he could
Now,
do it at home in his leisure.
by 75, was he retired?
He was, yes, he
Okay, so he didn't have a shop he could go into anymore.
No, but he had a basement workshop. He had
Right.
a milling machine. He had a lathe. Had a couple of lathes actually.
Yep.
So he had all the machinery to create and fabricate these things.
Okay. And then, so he used this on his place then for 10 years, 12 years? How long did this thing actually get service?
I would say 10 years. He passed away in 85, so
85. And how old was he?
he was 85.
He was 85 because he was born in 1900.
Right, exactly.
Right.
I don't think in the last couple of years he used this. As a matter of fact, he did acquiesce finally and buy a real garden tractor. In
No.
later years.
Ah, what a disappointment. Oh, Pa, you're killing me.
But actually, had 4 wheels and
4 wheels?
and
What, now you're going to tell me it had brakes and reverse, too?
and electric starting as well.
Unacceptable luxuries. You're killing my vision of my grandfather here, Dad.
So this fell into disuse in the last several years that he was around.
But for a while, right after he made it, was he happy with it?
He was
Did
very
it do
happy
what he
with it.
wanted?
He was delighted. He had something to ride on. He was he was getting to be an older man. Well, I should talk. I'm older than that when he built this thing, but it served his purpose very well. He was actually getting tired of using a wheelbarrow. So
Yeah.
this became his motorized wheelbarrow, if you will.
Right. And I see he had one concession to comfort here. He actually built the seat, which is quite wide, so a large man can ride on this.
And an upholstered seat.
And an upholstered seat cushion. And the seat is made out of wood,
Wood, of course.
so you don't freeze.
That's right.
I wouldn't have been surprised if it was just a piece of sheet steel for you to
Well-
sit on.
This was probably easier. I suspect my mother made the slipcover for that piece of foam rubber.
I bet she did. And, being a woodworker myself, I can tell that it was obviously a machinist who put this thing together, because no woodworker ever is going to take these angle brackets to join stuff like this. This is a machinist doing woodwork if I ever saw it in my entire life.
It is indeed.
I mean, you could have just run some screws in from there, but that's not the way he rolled. So it's good. And it was, the funny thing is he used it for a few years, and then it was my tractor when I was a little kid, and I loved riding around on this thing. It was my favorite thing to do was drive this tractor around. I used to drive it around in the dead of winter just for fun. I drove it around here all the time, so I have the best, most fun memories of this machine. So that's great. That's great. Well, listen, Dad, thanks so much for talking to us about it
most
and
welcome, Dave.
sharing this piece. This is exactly the sort of thing that people are interested in hearing about, because this is real ingenuity back before it was so popular to do stuff like this at home.
Actually, this brings back a lot of memories for me.
Yeah.
This was fun to do.
Well, he's the sort of guy who people tell stories about now. I mean, somebody who had the kind of skills for a living that a lot of people are only developing as a hobby now, and
Exactly.
probably don't approach half of what he knew how to do.
Less than half.
Yeah.
He was a master tool and die maker.
Yeah, it's really something. I wish he had lived longer so I could have known him better.
You would have enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Dad.
You're most welcome.